Guys, I'm in my infusion. I brought my sunshine. Okay, they gave me this cup, but that was that small. That was like that small. What's Dad got?
Big gulp.
It's so much. It's
Don't
so.
hate. Don't hate.
And we're going to talk about Dad flirting because. But enough of that. First things first, we are going to talk about Sleepy Hollow. I loved it. I can't wait. I love where it's going to go. It basically starts off in Sleepy Hollow and it goes back to the beginnings of the story. As everybody knows, Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman, and you get to see how the Headless Horseman became headless.
Got his
And,
head cut off.
and you're introduced to Ichabod Crane, and apparently they both, in the heat of battle, kill each other. And
They mortally wound each other. And Ichabod Crane goes into a medical tent and is tended to by his wife,
who you later found out is
a witch.
a witch. And you find out that by them both killing each other, and as they died, their blood intertwined, and there's a connection, and that's how the story begins because the Headless Horseman comes back to life. You don't know why yet, you will. And Ichabod Crane comes back to life, and he doesn't know why he's come back to life. And
Well, we're talking 250 years later.
yeah, 200, like now, as opposed to back then. And he resurfaces, and
He wakes up in a cave in beneath an aquifer in upstate New York, near where Sleepy Hollow is. And he digs his way out and walks toward town.
well, he wakes up in a shallow grave in a cave and he's surrounded by all this ceremonial stuff. And go ahead, Dad, you can take the rest.
He walks into town, and town is not like the town he left when he was,
It's
fighting
not.
in the Revolutionary War under General George Washington, which is, part of the story that, you probably didn't get when you read the original Sleepy Hollow Ichabod Crane Headless Horseman saga.
Things.
This version has a slant that connects the past with the present. And as my daughter said, it's very good. I think it's going to be a good storyline.
It really
The
is.
characters are believable. It's well acted, with a few exceptions.
Well, the only problem you had was like how when we're introduced, the Headless Horseman is introduced because he starts killing everybody. But these are specific people, reasons you will eventually know. And this particular victim, where we're introduced to the sergeant, sheriff,
He's the sheriff of town.
he has a deputy that's about to leave, and they answer a call, and there they find a headless man, and they're wondering what's going on, and that's when the Headless Horseman is introduced to the storyline.
And he kills the sheriff by beheading him.
And the deputy who is there, who is the female lead, she is the first to actually see the Headless Horseman and see that there's something going on. I forgot how she met Ichabod.
Well, remember, he walked into town and was almost hit by a car and a truck.
Right.
Because he was on a highway that,
Used to be a dirt
used to be a
road.
dirt road. And as he walked into town, one of the officers saw him, and he was walking in the middle of the street, and he looked like he was covered with mud and blood, which he was, because he's buried that way, and he was arrested. And
All right, and then he brought up she was reporting the crime of her sheriff being killed, and then he,
She saw on the horseman's hand a tattoo and described it, and Ichabod Crane recognized it from his encounter with the horseman in his real time. That's how they were connected.
and then he described like how the sheriff was, his body was found, and how when he was beheaded, the cut was cauterized, meaning it was burned, because as if the blade were on fire,
It was a mystical blade, mystical axe.
and she just saw the connection, and he saw the connection of her, and they just, at first she considered him crazy, but then as things started progressing, she noticed that he knew a little bit more than he should have known.
And he was at first the lead suspect, but as people were continuing to be killed and he was incarcerated, they began to realize that he wasn't the problem. He was somebody who knew how to help
Right.
solve the problem, and not the person who should be in jail. The part that I had a problem with was when she reported these things to her superiors, they immediately scoffed and made fun of her and ridiculed her, which you kind of get a little bit of naturally because these things are unbelievable. But for somebody who's part of your core department, you should give them a little bit more due when they tell you something that you may find hard to believe. Doesn't mean it's not true because you don't believe it and you don't think it's possible.
And it's not like she was imagining it. She
Right.
described things as it was. It wasn't like,
And they were corroborated by this guy.
that, and you could see. And it's not just us seeing it as, we were watching the show. If you went and investigated it, you could see that the same thing happening, you could just see the truth. And they just tried to blow it off like, oh, you're tired. You're still getting over the fact that the guy died. Rest, you'll be okay. Listen to what I say, blah, 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 blah.
But we come to find out later on that these things, as they were given to her as excuses, were really dodges because the people who were giving her this brush off were involved. So
And the sheriff knew a hell of a lot more than he was telling.
the original sheriff who was killed had been researching these witches and the horsemen and the. We don't want to give away everything. You need to watch it because it's great. But
It's really good. If you get a chance, watch the first episode because that'll get you started. And that's what was good about the show. It was like the science fiction of it and the mythology of it. It was presented very well, but it also had a great background story and it had great side stories. You weren't going to get bored.
which you will see emerging as you watch the series.
And you'll notice that the deputy, or whatever her name is, she's part of the story too. And she's more part of it than she even knows. And we'll find out together. We all find out with her, which makes it even better.
So our analysis of Sleepy Hollow is big thumbs up. Yeah. Whatever.
So have a good weekend. Tomorrow we're going to be on our way to my filming. But wait a second. I got something else to say when we are leaving here. It's about him. Never mind. Hold on. We'll be right back. Hold on.